All righty, so we are recording. I can field questions, and I know there's questions about the project that's coming up due on Sunday. I think probably there's some questions on that. Probably some questions from last week. I have started, some of you, I have graded your discussion board from last week. Actually, most of you I have, I think maybe. Shannon, I don't think I've graded yours. Bria, I think I was working on yours.
I was going to say, I think I just checked and I didn't see it yet.
Yours may be the one that's up here. No, that's Alyssa. Michael, I know I did yours.
Yep. I already got my grade, read the rubric.
Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Megan, I don't know if I've done yours or not. Maybe I haven't done everybody that's on here. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have
but anyway, much better this week so far, I will say. And I think a lot of it was because just trying to understand exactly what we're looking for and how we're looking for it. When the things that I'm looking for, and it's hard to make that jump from OTA to OT mindset, I'm sure. It's probably not an easy transition. This is your second semester? Is this your second semester? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm pushing you. I'm pushing you in there. I'm sure just like all the other instructors are pushing you towards OT. So your thought process now has to switch from, okay, this is what they're telling me, this is what it is, this is what you do, to, am I sure this is what it is? Am I sure this is what I need to do? And why do I need to do it? And I need to prove why I'm doing it. Does that make sense? I think, I mean, because you go to school, you learn your interventions, you learn your, you know, for pediatrics, you learn which assessment tools you're supposed to use. You know you're supposed to do education and training because you've got to do home exercise programs, or you've got to send something home with the patient. But the question is, what am I sending home to them? And how do I know what I'm doing with this person really works? Well, I know I learned it in school, but things change from school. And I don't know if I told y'all this the last time we were on the phone, but I was teaching my class, my face-to-face class, and we were talking about patients. We were teaching them pain and PAMS, doing PAMS and pain. And I told them, I said, some patients with pain will fake it. They'll fake their pain. And there's tests that you can use to determine that. A lot of times the functional capacity evaluations will have a test in there. And when back in the old days, many years ago, when I was doing that, we used grip strength testing. And there's a curve. You can tell when, what's the term for faking it? That's not the professional term. What term am I looking for? Anyway, I'm going to say
self-limiting.
There's another word for it though. Anyway, I'm going to just say faking it because that's what we're talking about. So there's a curve, or there used to be, when you would do the grip strength and do it like 4 times, and there's a curve to when you could see them faking it, because the first one, they're not going to squeeze it all. Or, anyway, there was a specific pattern to look for. And so in class the other day, I was like, I didn't give y'all an evidence-based article on this. Let me see if I can find it. So I looked it up, and there's no proof anymore. There's been studies on it since I used to do it, and so it's no longer valid. And I was like, see, I mean, I probably would have gone and done it had I not looked that up. So things are changing so fast in healthcare now, and there's so much more research out there than what even was in our textbooks. There's so much more research out there that we need to really be sure what we're doing and what we're saying and what we're telling our patients. So the only way I know that what you're saying is evidence-based is if you cite it. That's the only way I know that you know what is evidence-based out there, right? And that's why I said every time and it seems like there's redundancy, but every time you write a fact down there, you should be able to tell me where you got that from. I know it sounds like it's just duh, right? Duh, but you still need to be able to cite those things. Is anybody frustrated with that? Or having trouble finding it or anything?
I don't know if frustration is just there's just so much reading, and then to have to reach out to find more can get overwhelming to really comprehend everything. I think that's the only frustration I think I have.
And the thing about that, when you go to find, you don't, I mean, there's some articles that have everything you need to know in there. And if you look at the article and look at the references below that they looked at, then you can see where they found all of their information. Because a lot of the articles will already have a literature review for you. So if you find a really good article, you take the literature review, you see what their references were, and you look those up. It's called shepherdizing, that article. But so it's not, I mean, and I don't want you creating a whole literature review for every discussion board. That's not what I'm saying. But if you, like, for instance, if you said that occupational therapy helps with rest and sleep, and for the infant and toddler, then you find an article to back you up on that rest and sleep, and it needs to be something that's been studied, not just a book that says OT helps with this, but something that shows where OT was involved in a protocol of some sort or a program of some sort, teaching them how to teach, or working with the clients on rest and sleep, or the caregiver, so that you can say, hey, yes, this has worked. And what's the difference in OT doing that and nursing doing that? Why, you know, we need to make sure that, because I'm hearing, and y'all must be going through a lot of how to teach and how to educate your patients right now. I don't know if a lot of that's going on, but everybody seems to be talking about teaching and educating your patients, which is good. We do have to do that. But do we have anything out there that shows us why OT has to do that versus a speech therapist or a PT, or especially when you're talking about the infant? You know, there's why would the infant need an OT to teach them mother how to breastfeed versus a lactation consultant?
I see. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if this is a good time, but this is going to go back to our paper. But what you're saying has my question. So can we talk about that next?
Yeah, we can talk about the paper. Yeah.
Okay, so you were just saying how we needed to have research or evidence base if it refers back to the framework, which is what we need to do in this paper, correct? And we say how does this adverse childhood issue affect the child in occupations? And we are saying, you know, I'm just going to throw some things out there. So like depression. So it's going to affect it can affect the way they get ready in the morning. If they're depressed, maybe they're not real motivated. Now, do I have to find evidence-based proving that a child that's depressed will have trouble with motivation of getting dressed?
You would have to, well, what you need to find is evidence to show what you would do for that. Yes, you got to tie that in. And see, I think that's the hard part. It's like, we know this is a problem, right? We know these are problems. But yes, we have to show that. So, okay, so let's use that again. Your client is depressed.
Mm-hmm.
With depression comes lack of grooming and hygiene. That's probably a better thing. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to take care of themselves, right? Or bathe. Right. Or whatever. We do know that because we've learned that in psych, in our psych training or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to say started that, though? Where did the problem originate? Because of the social injustice? Is that
yeah, like that is something that could happen with a child that has faced with a tragedy or a trauma.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
that's a possibility of depression could occur.
Okay.
So because we have to refer back to the OTPF. So I was just curious. So if we state in that, and depression was one of them,
Mhm.
do we have to state when we say what is affected and with evidence base?
Yes. Okay. So
I'm
let me
saying.
ask you this question. This will get you started. So you know the social injustice was there. You know the child has been through a rough time, and you
Mhm.
know that because you've gone in, what type of assessment are you going to do on that child? How do you know they're depressed?
Okay, to determine that.
Yes. What are you going to do to determine that they are depressed?
It's a good question.
This is why I'm saying I think y'all have to jump from CODA to OT. So this is going to make all the difference in the world. If you say, I've got this client, okay, I have this client that was referred to me because they're now in foster care because they were abused or whatever.
Okay.
I've just gotten this client sent to me. What do I do? Well, I have to evaluate them first, find out what's wrong. Because what is your approach? What's your initial approach going to be? Do you think it's going to be physical or do you think it's going to be mental? We don't really know until we go see them.
Yes.
So we have to be prepared for both. So we would do an overall evaluation and we find out potential factors for that child. That social injustice. If you think about doing your activity analyses that we used to do a long time ago,
Mhm.
the factors that fall out from that could be, I mean, the whole book, right? The whole book of factors could probably be a problem with that child. So when you're looking at the factors, you can pick the main ones that you think might happen because you would have done an evaluation from Beck Depression Scale or whatever it might be that you would have come up with that problem. But then what do you do about it? How do you fix that problem from an OT perspective? What is the intervention that you would do? And you would look up pediatric depression from abuse or whatever it is and occupational therapy.
That's where I get a little confused, just because with the directions for our presentation this week, it says using the OTPF, describe the following. And then that goes into the environmental and cultural context and occupations that may be affected. So I did go through the framework piece by piece, section by section, and give the OT perspective of what might be affected. But what you're saying is you're also wanting us to go beyond just the framework and find assessments that we may use to determine their level of depression. And that may be why they're not completing occupations.
Let me pull up the instruction so I know I'm not saying something wrong. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe if I can figure out how to do it. Let's see, share screen. Okay. This one. I'm going to pull us over here. So can you see me? Can you see my screen? Well, hello there, Megan, little girl. Cute. Okay, so this says identify an adverse childhood experience resulting in social injustice and support your findings with evidence. What does the literature say regarding society's understanding and approach toward this issue? Using the OTPF, describe the following: the environment, cultural context, aspects of the experience, and how they affect the child. So that's your occupational profile right there. When you're looking at them, you're pulling up your profile, right? What occupations are affected? That's from your profile as well. And then what are the client factors that are impacted? That's from your framework, right? And then a brief description of how you would approach treatment with the child. So this is the part where you're going to have to really show evidence for this part. This other part is going to be historically from, you know, a diagnostic kind of, like the client has this problem or this happened to them and this is what fell out of it. So it's going to be more, you're not showing studies here really as much as you would be down here for the treatment with the child. So when you have a child that has had that issue, whichever one you chose,
Mm-hmm.
and typically you would see the occupations of that child, you know that with that there are, you know, you can use this, the social psychiatric factors, or you can use the, it could possibly be physical problems that could be happening with the client. But you, how would you approach treatment with them? What would you do? Are you going to look at them for, and I don't have my OTPF in front of me, but look on the approach page. Are you looking at improvement? Are you looking at quality of life? What type of approach are you looking at for that child? And so when you look, and then you need to show evidence for whatever protocol it is or whatever type of approach. For example, if the, let's say the client was shaken baby, had shaken baby syndrome, and they have they're hypertonic all over.
Mm-hmm.
They're an infant, they're hypertonic. We're going to use a remediation approach, or what's the word? Anybody have their OTPF with them?
I have it. It says establish or restore.
Establish. Okay, that's the one. That's it. Okay, so we want to restore. Well, actually, the child probably is too young to restore, but we're going to help develop their, or help them get through their developmental milestones. But we're going to improve it. It's going to be improvement, right? So what approach do I take with that child? Well, I personally have been NDT certified. So I'm going to take a neurodevelopmental approach with them. And I'm going to work them through that. I would put a little blurb about neurodevelopmental, what it is, and what approach I would take with that child. Then I could look at the other factors, like the social factors, social participation factors. What type of approach would I take with them on that? Well, that might be the part where I'm going to work parent-child approach and use some education and training. But I need to show evidence that that works from an OT perspective. And I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure there's something out there that shows at that level how to teach a parent to do something, right? I mean, I'm sure there's something there for that. So look at those different factors and kind of break them down and see what type of approach might be appropriate for that child, considering the occupational profile that you can look at and say what happened or where they're at, or, you know, what's going on. And then what is impairing the ability to overcome the issue? Again, what is the issue? The shaken baby syndrome, let's say if we're taking that, what are the reasons behind that? What's happening out there? What can we do in the world to change that? Kind of a world view of that.
Would that be like primary, secondary, and like tertiary ways to combat the issue?
Could be. Yeah. I mean, now I'm in primary, secondary, and tertiary from from evidence-based practice, and I'm like, we're not doing any research projects here. Okay, no research. So explain exactly what you're talking about there for primary.
What you would do like with the individual, and then how the community could address it.
Yes, and how the world, yeah, from a community out perspective.
Yeah,
that'd be good. That'd be a great way to look at it. Whatever you think there, but you need to have some data to back that up. That's where you go to your statistics and you see what, you know, what do the statistics say about shaken baby syndrome in McLennan County, and how, you know, what are some ways that OT could intervene with that? What do we do? And I mean, those kind of things we really need to do that, and we're not doing it. OT tends not to do those kind of things. So that's kind of you're stepping out of your comfort zone here. Yeah, individually we can treat them, and even maybe family-wide we can treat them, but when it comes to city, community, state, how are we can OT impact that? And if so, what could we do? And there may not be an answer, evidence-based answer, other than making a educated guess because somebody else is doing this, and you tie in what OT can do to that. Does that make sense? Kind of compare what other people do or other disciplines do,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
how OT can do that. For a good example would be how OT is getting out of all these psychiatric centers. But there's so much that we can do in there. Why aren't we still there? You know, you've got rec therapy over here and psychology over here doing this, and there's no OT. So how can we make that? What could we do there? There's a lot that we could do, and there's a lot of data that shows that we could improve patients'
Quality of life. Mhm. Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Can I go back up to the interventions real quick? So every single intervention that we have has to have the evidence-based. Like we can't just do like clinical experience.
If you put an intervention down there that you think needs to be, or that would work with that child for whatever factors you're looking at, you need to support it
Okay.
with evidence.
I definitely did not do that. Yeah, I was just going from clinical experience and what I thought we would do with them, not evidence. So I'll have to change
Yeah.
that.
And we have to do that. That's why we're in school, because we're going to be, and to be honest, if we don't start justifying what we do, we're not going to get paid for it. So I would rather be able to go talk to the client and talk to the patient and the family and say, look, here's evidence that shows if you work with your child 3 times a day doing this, this child is going to progress and get better, versus going to them and saying, hey, I want you to do this home exercise program. Or you could even say, if you don't do this, this is what happens, and show them a picture of a child with contractures, because that's what the evidence showed. I mean, it just gives you more clout, and it makes us sound a lot more valuable. I mean, showing that the evidence is out there. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be sitting here saying that, because I was scared to death when I had to do evidence-based stuff. And I was where you are, Megan. It was like everything has to be done.
Yeah, that's what I definitely didn't jump to that when I was reading the assignment and everything. I just used clinical judgment, and I'm like, didn't even think of finding articles for every single intervention. So
I want to show y'all something. I want to show you something, and maybe I'm a little obsessive. Okay, I'll give you that. I'm a little over the top on some things, but ever since I started my OTD program, I've kept my articles that I find, my all of my evidence-based articles. And I remember them because I've read, or not all of them, I don't remember all of them, but I know where they're at if I need to look for them. And I can go pull them out and use them in, I've used some of the same articles that I used in the OTD program I'm using now. So this is my Zotero. Do y'all use Zotero? Have you ever tried it? It's wonderful. It's where I keep all of my articles that I download, or well, you can download them or not. But for example, here's my whole like if I go to Capstone, these are articles that I had pulled up for my Capstone. I have a different one for every class that I ever took. And I've just pulled my articles over here. And if I want to go, oh, there's my EBP one. If I want to put it into one of my reports, then I right click on it and I hit create bibliography. I want it to be APA, and now see they've already changed it to 7th edition here. We're still on 6, but so I hit bibliography and I say, okay. Then I'll put it into a Word document. I want a new Word document. Cancel that. Oh, so you have to make sure that you put copy to clipboard or it's going to save it as an RTF. So I'm going to copy it to clipboard. Then I'm going to put it on a Word document. Y'all can still see my thing going, right? It's slow. Oh, it's telling me good evening. How cute is that? Okay, so then I right click again. And I'm supposed to be able to paste it. I'm gonna oh, there it is. And then it puts it in there. So the problem is though, I know that this is incorrect right here.
Yeah, too many caps.
It's total, it's all caps. That is not correct. So I have to go in and fix it. Now, if I were to want to use it again, so I'll go in and I'll fix all of this.
Is that because it's in 7th edition? Is that?
No, it's not.
It's back from when you did it before. It kept that format. It didn't change it to the current.
For some reason, it does this. And I honestly, I don't know why it shouldn't do this.
Okay.
It makes no sense. And that's why I'm like, don't say, well, you should be right, because it's gonna get counted off, even though it should be right. I argued that myself. It's like somebody needs to talk to Zotero and tell them to set this up correctly. And I'm sure people have, but surely they have. Oops. All of that looks right, and that looks right. Now, some instructors will tell you to remove the link. And so to do that, I highlight and I right click and I say remove hyperlink. Then I go over here and I take out the underline and I change the color to black. Well, yeah, there. Okay. So then, okay, so I'm going to use this multiple times. So I'm going to take this that I just did here. Actually, I'm just going to take the title. Oops, just the title, because that's the part that's wrong. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back over here to my Zotero, and you see here's the title in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's wrong. So I'm going to paste it correctly in there. All right. So then I'm going to go back up here. I'll do it again, and let's see what happens. There's the bibliography, copy to clipboard. Go over here. And it is correct now. See that?
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I have everything that I've ever done in here, and I'm doing my dissertation now, working on it, and I've got a ton of stuff. A lot of it is duplicated because I found it multiple times. So I'll go through and clean this up before I get ready to use it. And let me find a good one here. Let's see. If you want to do your whole bibliography, you can come over here, right click, and say create bibliography from collection. APA bibliography. I want the bibliography copied to clipboard. Then I'm going to come over here, down here, and I'm going to hit Control V, and it puts it all there for me in alphabetical order. Okay.
Yeah, my mind is blown.
I mean, there are shortcuts to this. There's a lot of shortcuts. And believe me, if there's a shortcut, I'm going to find it. Now, that being said, I still have to go in and fix all these because they're
Right.
not right. I mean, so I still have to go in and look and see what's there.
Is
But,
this a service you paid for?
well, it's free. You can get it free. I pay for it because you see how many I have on there.
Right. So if once you get to a certain point,
Yeah,
you're
you
in.
can only
Okay.
keep so much. And it is it's cloud based, so you can take it wherever. You can get onto it wherever. But I mean, it has saved me so much time.
I have a question.
Okay.
Just because I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So, like on our project, like if we're identifying the areas of occupation that may be impacted by an ACE, and say we list them all out based on what we know about it, everything we learned so far, do you want us to find research per area of occupation that we identified and treatment interventions for that regarding that section? Say like we were talking about rest and sleep. What if I did ADLs and I did rest, sleep, leisure, participation, play, whatever?
Right. Yes.
Or do you just, for the purpose of the assignment, do you just want us to focus on one area of occupational need?
There's going to be more than one area. So you'll need, I mean, there should be more than one area of occupational need for that. So yeah, but there needs to be something that says that that's a problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just because that's what I was thinking. I know there's like more than one area, and when you're looking at an occupational injustice, and depending on how you spin it, there could also honestly be a deficit in all areas.
There could be. There
of
could be.
occupation.
I mean,
So
I'm not going to go in and count. Did you do 5 interventions on this one? I just need to know that you understand and have evidence to back up what you say for those areas. Because if you think about it, what approach are you going to take with a child that has, you know, that well, what age group are we looking at here? Just
ACE
any-
affects ACEs affect from birth to 17.
Okay. So let's say we have a child that they're a child of an alcoholic, maybe, or drugs and alcohol abuse or whatever, and they have what would be a problem? I mean, you need to come up with the diagnosis for that. Or what's the reason they're being referred to OT? That's the thing you need to think about. What is
Okay.
their reason?
So it could be, so we're going to make up our own setting then?
Yeah, you can.
So, you know, since I work in the schools, I'm going to go down that road. I'm going to be thinking, why would they be presented to me in a school setting?
Correct.
Behaviors, typically, or, you know, not up to par in their educational studies.
Right. And so how does that affect their occupations from that setting? Good point. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
okay, so here's another question for you then. We had to do a rough draft. Okay, at this point, mine is really, really, really rough.
That's
So
fine. I'm not grading those, guys. That is something they did this with us in our programs. We would put out a rough draft, what we thought we were going to do, and we helped each other. It was like, oh, maybe you need to take a look at it this way and go this direction, just so somebody else gets some eyes on it.
okay,
So,
because I'm thinking I'm going to have a lot going a different direction at this point.
that's fine. It's fine. And just
Okay.
you might just go
Okay.
back into your thing and say, oh, hey, I have changed this direction. This is another direction that I'm going. And hopefully after people hear this, they'll all think that same way. But yes, so you have to have an idea of where you're starting from. So that's why you need to, you've picked an ACE, I'm sure, of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was a struggle. think the lack of information there was a struggle getting started to get that flow a rolling, you know, to develop this paper.
And then to narrow it down, because it's so, I mean, they're so broad, and so now we can kind of put it in context of an individual that we would be coming across is
Right.
So I can see where I can now focus it and narrow it down instead of making a 40-page PowerPoint.
Right. And I probably should have put on here, identify an adverse childhood experience specific to an individual or something to
A
let
specific setting or a,
yeah, but the environmental, cultural, contextual aspects of the experience and how they affect the child. So I guess I made an assumption there that that was how it was going to be. But yes, it would be, you have to have something to start with. I mean, and maybe next year I should like give you something to start with. That might have been better.
because there's so, oh, am I muted or not? Because there's so much under that, or for number one, when you're looking at that, the framework.
Right.
So it's so broad. So it's like, okay, well, this is what she wants. This is what she said.
Yes. So narrowing it down to the specific child and then looking at the problem, what you might see, how you might assess it, and then from there, from your perspective, maybe you are a psychiatric CODA or OT, sorry, I'm teaching CODAs now. So maybe you are the psychiatric OT in a mental health setting, from whatever setting you're in. Consider how that would affect and what interactions and interventions might be necessary, because you're going to have more idea from your own setting what's necessary for that child than geriatric OT figuring out what a pediatric therapist would do, right?
That's exactly my confusion, because I'm all geriatrics. That's all I've ever done. So am I supposed to pretend that I work in a school setting or a psychiatric setting, or because I just chose child sexual abuse, and I am writing all about how all of the occupations, the context, everything would be affected for a child that experienced that ACE.
So you are in you are in a geriatric setting. Guys, can y'all help her come up with an idea?
Yeah. Christy,
I have one, but I'm not going to tell you. What is it?
Christy, well, I was thinking, because she's a home health therapist, and I kind of look at kids, usually if we're seeing a child, it's because they're not meeting the developmental milestones that they're typical of their peers, whether it's behavior, performance skills, movement patterns, all of that stuff is usually what triggers a child to come on caseload. So since you work in home health, and I have done pediatrics in home health as well, and I am in home health now with adults, some of the things that I've seen kids on for, if they were EI, it's because in those younger ages is because there was a huge delay in developmental milestones. As they get older, it's still kind of like with adults. It's play participation in the home, or they were working on helping get themselves dressed in the morning, picking out their school morning routine. They were having trouble with that. So I think if you stick with your setting, but think about a child developmentally, and then you look at, okay, how does sexual abuse affect a child's developmental patterns and milestones? The occupations will start presenting themselves.
Okay. So I appreciate all that. Thank you. Yeah, because I've never seen pediatrics in home health. But then where is this whole pretend setting in the paper or presentation?
Okay, let me take you down another road here, and let's think about this. So, you are in home health, and maybe you have I've gotten the Alzheimer's patient or the psychiatric patient in home health. I'm sure you've probably seen that yourself. What if that patient was the result of a sexual abuse as an older adult?
So it's not necessarily this is still a child. This is now the adult of the
version
child
of
who
it.
Experienced it. Okay, so now this is my page. I can completely picture that now because
Okay.
I actually know somebody that way. So I can easily adapt that.
Do you see how that might take a different?
It completely does. Now, I'm not writing that this is an adult. I'm not writing about a specific client. I'm just talking about the overall, how child sexual abuse may be.
Wrong.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so
we
and
are
this is something,
talking
I'm
about
glad you brought that up, because this is something that I want everybody to do, because a lot of y'all are writing and I'm seeing a global picture, but it's not getting deeper into such as, like you'll write something and then I'm like, yeah, you're on the right track, but then there's no such as, so no further explanation of where you're going with that. So I think you have to have that base of, you have to have that person in your head of what you're talking about there. I mean, you don't have to say, this is a story about Joe and Joe was a whatever, but I think you do need to set the stage in your paper about where you're going with it. Because that way I can go and say, yes, this is evidence for the sexual abuse manifestations in the elderly or whatever. I mean, that's very interesting. There's probably a lot of stuff out there. Does that make sense?
It does. I think the only question I have is, where is that going, in what section? Because the OTPF stuff is there. I mean,
that would be in your number 1, the environmental, cultural, contextual aspects of the experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I have a few questions actually. In the syllabus, it says it's worth 50 points, but then online it says it's worth 150.
Really? It's whatever's in the syllabus.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then,
Syllabus.
So 50 points?
Let's pull up the syllabus. Hang on let's see what it says. I think it's probably because of the way the rubric is done. I probably need to readjust the rubric, more than likely.
That's what I just went to look at the rubric, and it was 150 there.
Yeah, I think that's probably why.
Did you say it was, oh, sorry.
Okay, so yes, your discussions are worth 300 points. That's crazy. And your assignments are worth 50 each, 400. I didn't make this up. I did not do this. Oh yeah. Interesting. Okay, yes, they're 50 each. I would have done it differently, but that's the way it is. So that's what we're going to go with.
okay. And then also, should we, my initial part of the paper was giving statistics on the ACE that I chose,
Mm-hmm.
and relating it back to the framework. So is that accurate?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you got to show that you understand what the injustice is. Yeah.
Right. So how many pages would you say you're looking for, just a rough estimate?
I would probably say 1 page per, maybe a half to 1 page per question.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And that's just if you're writing a paper versus people who are doing PowerPoint, because I am seriously considering just doing a paper at this point, because I've already started that for my rough draft.
Mm-hmm.
So then just asking for the PowerPoint people, are you saying a slide per?
Yep. Yep. Just as long as we can understand you, I mean, as long as I can get what I need to see out of that, you could show, if you could speak it when you're looking at the environmental, cultural, contextual aspect. So you set up the stage for what we're about to look for or look at, right? And how it affects the child. And then you go through your occupations, your client's factors, and then your treatment approaches for that child. And then you, so what are the barriers to overcome that? And then your worldly view of it. How do you see it being fixed? If the world was our oyster, how would we fix it? Kind of. That makes it sound simple, doesn't it?
When you say it like that, that sounds more like it's my opinion on how we could fix it.
No,
Yes.
it's not. Oh, the number 6 probably is your opinion. Yes. Number
'Cause you're-
6. How
I mean,
do
if you can find the evidence base, I can understand that, but you're kind of asking what, in this
In a
world, how can we stop these things from happening?
Well, and that would be taking all of this other stuff into consideration, everything that you've learned about it, 1 through 5. And then how do you see, that's where you synthesize and do some clinical reasoning. How do you see this? Can you make a plan to make that go away? Maybe, maybe not. And that's your own thing. I'm not going to look for a lot of evidence right there on number 6. That's just what you think about it. I'll give you that one.
I have a question.
Okay.
So for the number 4, the approach treatment, is
Mhm.
that looking for some like the frames of reference and models? Like for instance, I kind of chose like divorced parents and a child growing up in a separated home because that's what my daughter's facing. So I was like, might as well learn about something.
Uh-huh.
And I'd come across that, a lot of like the child and their nervous systems, it kind of impairs their functioning for that. So more of like a neurobiological approach and, like the mental health aspects of it and addressing treatment and treatment approach with children.
That is correct. Now, be sure that you don't just say those things, but you show specific treatment type. I need to be able, when I see this, I need to see you in your treatment session working with that patient.
Okay.
What are you going to
Okay.
be doing with them?
Okay. So specific treatment interventions as well.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're taking a neurobiological approach using PNF or using a NDT approach in order to get the child back to school or, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
Okay.
should be able to see, there should be a slide with several different, if you're doing a PowerPoint, a slide with several different treatment sessions going on what you'd be doing with that child. The Prezi would
Okay.
be really good for that, actually. Y'all do it? Have y'all ever used a Prezi before?
I have, yeah.
Because you
I
can break
have,
down each occupation and break it down into what you do with them.
I feel like I spend more time like editing it, like so it looks pretty and like
Yeah.
well, because I'm not super experienced with it. That at this point, I think I just need to type the paper up.
Okay.
I'm going with it. Paper.
Yeah, I
I'm
feel like
with
this
you, girl.
assignment is going a whole new route after this. So I'm hoping you're going to post this recording so the rest of our class can kind of hear all this.
I am.
Because I'm completely revamping mine now.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. If you need extra time on this, I will extend the due date if that will help.
It would be nice just because we have a big sensory assignment also due this weekend. So personally, I would appreciate that.
I'll
Yeah.
feel sorry for you and if y'all
At
don't
least-
fuss at me for not grading your papers soon enough, I'm like an overload on grading papers and I apologize. Trying to get it done.
That's okay.
Extending the date definitely helps the forgiveness factor.
Okay. All right.
At least have that flexibility.
Yes. I think I'll probably extend it to Wednesday. And then if that will help you. I do know, I didn't know that y'all shouldn't have to do anything over spring break. Did y'all know that? You have spring
No.
break?
Sensory said we have a major project due the following week. So she thought that we could work on that on our spring break.
She was posting it so we had the option in quotation marks to work on it. But it was
Okay.
highly suggested that we work on it.
Yeah.
I don't even know which unit week that would be. Do y'all have an idea?
I want to say
Like
somewhere after 6,
I think it's
something like that.
7, yeah.
Yeah. 7 or 8. I think it's 8.
a few of us are in a predicament because the initial calendar that was sent out to us had the wrong spring date or spring break dates on it. So some of us are on vacation the week after the actual spring break now. So we're going to be working ahead anyway.
The spring break, I think, is that first week of March, right?
Yeah.
Because my spring break is the second week. So actually, that would be week 7, I believe. Let's see. When is this due?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it piggybacks right after our next lab weekend.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, it is. It is the first week of March.
Yeah, it's spring break, yeah. And that is,
2nd through the 6th.
I don't think there's a whole lot of. I don't think this one's going to be that difficult, but I may have to move it back, move that unit in with unit 8 and figure out how to, which won't be hard because that's early adulthood and middle adulthood. So, but your assignment, your theory assignment is due that week. So we'll work it out. I'll move unit 7 somewhere afterwards, after spring break. Or just give you a freebie on that and you just read.
Ooh,
But
that
we're
would
going to be even more forgiving about grading.
okay, let's just keep her talking.
No.
We have recordings,
I am a
guys.
sucker. I'm sorry, but I usually am a sucker simply because I'm in school myself and I understand completely. So, okay.
appreciate that.
All right.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? I've
Mm-mm.
wasted enough time. Everybody good?
Thank you so much.
Does that
Yeah.
help? But that helps.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Blossom. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to figure out how to post this some way. And then I will talk to you guys next week, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Hmm.